Imagine if being an athlete meant being the best version of yourself, with no gender tied to it. If society can only have an opinion on an athlete based on something they read in a newspaper or an article, and all they saw was their name and what they accomplished, how different would gender bias be? Author Knapp of Strong is the New Sexy in Women, CrossFit, and Post-Feminist Ideas explains how the creator of CrossFit, Greg Glassman, intended for CrossFit the sport to be this way. Greg Glassman had a vision that creating a sport where women and men could be equal, doing the same workouts, would shift the ideal of appearances to now performance. This is a great way for female athletes to have the same privilege as male athletes. One female athlete has proven to excel in this sport and go beyond any expectations in this sport for a female athlete has been Annie Thorisdottir. Annie Thorisdottir is the definition of a strong, empowered, resilient female athlete. She is a 7 times game athlete. The games athletes in CrossFit is basically like achieving the Olympics, and she is a 7-year veteran. Aside from just being a 7-year CrossFit athlete, Annie is also a 5-year podium finisher. And if she wasn't on the podium, she was sitting on the sideline due to a back injury cheering on her other female athletes, competitors. So Annie is everything that a female athlete in CrossFit was empowered and built to be. Another couple of accomplishments that Annie has achieved has been just being known for her positive attitude. So Annie Thorisdottir is known as the positive Iceland Annie with always a smile on her face. CrossFit Journal explains her as one of the most positive female athletes in CrossFit due to her energy and due to her smile, even if she's finishing a brutal workout. Annie has also been interviewed by Reebok, ESPN, the CrossFit Games. She's been on news, on different news commercials. She's been on broadcasts. She's been on podcasts, and she's also the face of many ads and the face of CrossFit ads. So when the media represents her, there is a lot of different opinions and views that go into this because of how prominent of an athlete she is in this community of CrossFit. CrossFit's goal and what winning the CrossFit Games means is being the fittest woman or male in the world, right? That's what you get crowned. So Annie Thorisdottir has been crowned the fittest female in the world twice. So when media represents her, their goal is to empower young female athletes to be strong like Iceland Annie, and by putting images and by putting pictures and creating these ads, whether it's for CrossFit or whether it's just for fitness out, Annie is represented usually with a barbell or some sort of fitness gear surrounding her. So there could be running up hills, or there could be Annie with a barbell in a gym. Media always represents her tied to what she is doing. However, a lot of media has also shifted kind of from just the focus on her performance, which was Greg Glassman's main idea, to also focusing on her appearance because her body is so incredible and because her body also goes a little bit against what modern and kind of old feminist views tie into. A lot of female athletes kind of deviate from what femininity means by having these really strong muscles and having these abs and being able to lift more than males. So sometimes when media represents females and they're trying to empower young women, they become a little bit biased, and the media represents a little bit more appearance-based rather than performance-based. This can be seen in an article that discusses how bulky is still the new beautiful. Researcher Madaliger discusses how in this article, bulky is still the new beautiful. The appearance is still being focused on. So even the title of that, Madaliger explains how because that has been an ad and because strong is the new sexy is something that Madeleine talks about in her research, has been Reebok ads, has been, CrossFit's brand, and Annie has been in these articles. Strong is the new sexy and bulky is the new beautiful are still tying appearance to what strong means. So when someone like Annie is represented in a video lifting weight, or if she's in an image in a sports bra and short shorts representing an ad for bulky is still the new beautiful, it's still tying beautiful, which is an appearance, to strong. So this notion that feminine and beautiful can be strong, as opposed to media just representing strong as empowered or strong as resilient. I think one way that media can change this and shift this to fit more into what Annie represents herself in the media as was if that word strong is the new beautiful or strong is the new sexy shifted now to strong is the new fierce. And this is kind of how Annie represents herself in media. And so while she does take part in all of these ads and she's the face of so many huge fitness brands, such as the face of Reebok, with these ads, if you ever look at Annie's media and if you listen to her interviews, she is so authentic. And so her vision for herself as a female athlete is to be the best version of herself. And so the appearance space isn't really there for her. If it was just up to Annie and through her media, you can kind of see this, that it's all about winning and being the best through her training. She's a coach, a CrossFit coach. She's a co-owner of a CrossFit gym in Iceland. That's where she's from. And so when you look at her media, there's a little bit of a difference between how the media represents her in these ads to sell CrossFit, where appearance might still be tied to femininity and what people think femininity is, where Annie focuses on the performance, and that's truly what Greg Glassman wanted from this sport. So when Annie goes through when you go through Annie's media and you look at some of the different things, it really ties into what Elizabeth Daniels, researcher and author of Sex Objects and Sexy Athletes, the article from Elizabeth Daniels talks about how if the sport and the athlete match between the viewers on the participation, so if a women athlete is viewing if a female CrossFit athlete is viewing an ad on CrossFit and she sees Annie lifting weights and being strong and running up hills as fast as she can, it's more likely that she's not going to focus on what her body looks like and what she's wearing if the media didn't represent it that way. So if she was in a short sleeve shirt and pants and Annie was doing her ad and if the performance was what was focused on, Elizabeth Daniels talks about how the CrossFit athlete that's viewing that ad will be more likely to want to participate and have a positive self-image because they're focused on how that athlete is performing rather than just what they look like. So it's interesting to see the tie between how the female athlete, such as Annie, who really is just authentic and has that goal of just mentality of winning, focuses on that in her media, whereas what media represents still sells the appearance space to get people to come into the brand of CrossFit. When you go into Annie's media, one of her biggest quotes is, "You are only confined by the walls you build yourself." And so there are so many motivating things through Annie's social media, but I think that is one of the biggest things, that if you really focus on that, you are only confined by the walls that you build yourself. That just shows how Annie is not confined by any walls, and so gender doesn't confine her, and gender doesn't tie her down, and media's views or feminine views on what femininity means doesn't tie her down because she doesn't let those walls be built. So she's only confined by the wall she builds herself, and I think that speaks for itself. I think that shows beautifully how Annie represents herself and what her goal is in the sport of CrossFit. One of the reasons that Annie is someone that females look up to, and something that Greg Glassman also said in that article in Strong is the New Sexy that Knapp talks about, is that his goal was for young female athletes to have role models that were positive to look up to and to shift away from that bikini model role model. And I think Annie is the perfect example of that. So she goes against cultural norms by having these strong muscles and by not being afraid to beat her boyfriend in workouts and put that on social media. Her boyfriend is also a CrossFit Serious Games athlete, and the beauty of their relationship and something that's public, right, is that he supports her. He's never won the CrossFit Games. He's never been the face of Reebok or the face of CrossFit, but it doesn't matter to him about masculinity or femininity. It matters that he's proud that his girlfriend is the best female athlete in the world, one of them, right? And so that's just a beautiful example of how the shift from a cultural norm of a male having to be on top or a male in a relationship having to win isn't the case in this situation. And so Annie has won Guinness World Records for the most thrusters with a certain amount of weight on the bar. And Annie has tested kind of that boundary of what feminine means because she's not afraid to be her true, authentic self. And it really shines through in her positive attitude and her resilience, in the fact that when she loses, she still comes back every year to compete. And so it doesn't matter what her body looks like to her. And I'm sure that it does matter in a sense of nutrition and being healthy, but that goes into her sacrifices and her training every day. And she'll continue to defy cultural norms by being the best athlete in the world, because when she has that one vision of just winning and wanting to be the best version of herself in this sport and kind of encourage women to do the same, she's going to continue to be someone that I would always want on my team.